Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see everybody logging in. I'm sure people are coming in from all over North America and is very, very exciting. And today is all about real estate predictions for 2026. If you're anything like me, you read everything you can get your hands on from a real estate prediction standpoint. And I'm always curious, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my clients? And so today, I'm Cleve Gaddis, and Verl Workman and I are going to kind of walk through Forbes predictions. And they're not Forbes making the predictions, they're experts who write for Forbes who are making the predictions. And I think, Verl, we've got several choices. We can agree with what they say, we can agree and expand on it, or in some cases, we can disagree or take the contrary position. And so I think there's a lot of that that's going to happen on today's sessions. And so as I was thinking about preparing for today, I was thinking, how would I, as a team leader, use the information? Because the reality is, in my opinion, it's not really about what might happen. In my opinion, it's really about how buyers and sellers and agents will behave if the predictions are true, or how they will behave if the predictions are not true. And so it's really more about how do we have better conversations with buyers and sellers about what's happening that allows people who feel stuck in many cases to move forward. I'm sure you have a few opening comments, Burl, so let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, so as I was thinking through and preparing for this, I was thinking about, okay, what is actually happening? What are we actually seeing versus what the experts think is going to happen? And there's some really interesting comments. So I think we're going to have fun as we do that. I want to welcome everybody. First of all, thank you. Thanks for being part of the Workman family, and thank you for joining us today. As you jump onto the call, we'd love to have some of you turn on your video and also go into your chat box and say hello and where you're from, and let's make sure that everybody's connecting with each other. And if you have any specific questions or comments, let's use chat instead of Q&A. And I know Taylor and Candace are going to monitor as we go. If you have the opportunity to turn video on, please do that. I've learned that when you're on video, you're a lot more attentive, and also you can kind of lean in. And we're excited. We're excited you're here, Cleve. It's been an interesting morning this morning. There's a lot of, and also coming back off of just getting back from Inman and seeing what all of the trends and what everybody's talking about, what the overarching conversations have been in. And then when we look at the report that Forbes put out, there's a lot of opinions on what everybody is thinking and should be doing and what the market's going to do.
And in many cases, those opinions are being shared by someone who has not ever had one conversation with a
Right?
buyer or a seller prospect. And I'm not saying I discount them, but I was thinking about this as I prepared. I'm like, the people on this list who are making the predictions, they're not earning their living selling
No.
homes. They're not running a team. They're not running a brokerage. They're not having to have the down and dirty conversations with people. Because one of the things that I kept thinking about, Verl, as we prepared is, we have a shift module that our private coaching clients used. It's very, very effective, and it's called the river of real estate. And the concept behind the river of real estate is really simple. It is the things that cause people to buy and sell have nothing to do with whether or not it is a good market. And that is something that we all need to remember. It is life changes. It is getting married. It is having babies. It is moving near grandkids. It is whatever it is. It's life changes that cause people to make a move. I'm right in the middle of making a move from Atlanta to Dallas, Texas. And people would say, well, it's not the best time due to interest rates. And that's true. It's not the best time, but it's the time for me in my life to make that move. And so I don't really care what the interest rates are saying. And so I want to just cover a couple of things before we get started. Number one, household formation in the U.S. is what drives everything. The formation of new households every year is what drives the real estate market. So it either increases demand or it decreases demand. And lately, we generally form between 1 million and 1,000,001 or 1 million and 1,000,002 households. But over the last couple of years, Harvard says in 2025, they project that we will create 860,000 households, which is lower. Now, during the recession, so that everybody has a point of comparison, from 2008 to 2012, that was closer to 500,000. So it really slowed things down. So Right now, we have 860,000 new households, but we have 1,300,000 to 1,400,000 new housing units being produced in 2025. So we should be catching up on where we were behind. But say, and experts say that we're still, as a country, this is in the US, we're 3.8 million housing units behind where we need to be because of building shortfalls that go all the way back 10 years ago. So we have to remember US population is growing more slowly, and we have to remember that young households are not being formed as fast as they used to be formed. People are waiting. People are living with their parents longer. They're living with roommates longer. They're delaying marriage and delaying kids and delaying buying. And in some cases, they're trying to figure out, Verl, how do we choke this down if we do want to buy because it's very expensive. So I looked at some things and I want to just give this last piece of information. Over the last 40 years, house pricing growth has outpaced income growth 1.7 times. The price of houses has increased twice as fast almost as incomes. And so when you have that happening and you have interest rates that are not inflated by, historical standards, but they're certainly inflated when we look at 2020 and 21, and when we look at 2010 all the way to, 2020, the interest rates are inflated. And so these were things that I was just trying to get out there. These are the things that I'm using to make some decisions on whether or not I believe what these people are saying.
But what I think is interesting is that it's like a perfect storm of confusion because it doesn't make logical sense when you look at all of the things that you just went through. We have life changes, a shorting of housing, but housing prices have gone up faster than incomes. Like that doesn't make logical sense. And so, with the interest rates and all of the disruption in the marketplace. And so that's why people feel confused. And when people feel confused, they don't take action. I feel like when they feel confused or frustrated because the information coming in is so it's so
It's bipolar. It's
well, yeah, that's
bipolar.
right.
It's
There's
it's
no,
at
it
one.
doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So
Right.
anyway, it's just interesting. It's confusion. So how do we, so what our role is, what I believe our role is, isn't to talk people into buying or selling. Those events are already happening, but it's to eliminate confusion so that they can make the best decision and move forward. And I think that when we become more counselors and advisors in the process instead of salespeople, that it elevates us as an industry, but it also elevates our professionalism and justifies whatever it is we're going to charge for the service we provide. Um, Counselors get paid more money than realtors. Meaning, if you're providing financial service counseling, if you're, doing advice that is um, life changing for people, those advisor roles are highly respected, and
Yeah.
realtors just generally aren't. I mean, anybody can sell a house and drive people around and show houses.
Well, good thing in most of the polls we get rated higher than politicians and used car salesmen. So, which is not true, by the way, because a lot of the real estate pros I know out there are freaking amazing. They will fight for somebody to do the right things, and so it's really interesting to understand how the public looks at us.
Well, yeah, not only is it interesting, I think I actually believe that most of the agents who do most of the business are exceptional,
Yes.
right? And it's the other 80% that give the industry a bad name. It's not the ones that are really great at it. And I, you know, and a lot of people want to be great at it. They just don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the, let's just kind of get into it.
Let's do it. So, do you have the first prediction there, or do you want me to give it to you, or how do you want to do this?
You see them on the slide deck?
Yep.
I'll just go through them. Let's just go through them and we'll just talk about it. So the first one is in 2026 is going to be a micro market year where neighborhood level data matters more than national averages. The solution for many of these buyers is to stop praying and start expanding their search criteria. So what they're saying is home prices are going to stabilize and not crash, but it's going to be neighborhood focused, not national focused. You can't look at national change. I actually am seeing this. I think that this is pretty accurate.
So I agree with that. I think in the Northeast and the Midwest, I think we'll see modest appreciation in the remainder of the U.S. And I think Canada is going to see some slight decreases from a pricing standpoint because I think there's some unusual pressures on the market up there. But as I read this, they're saying stabilize, and they're not saying stabilize and go up slightly. They're saying stabilize, and they don't believe that they will continue to go down. And I 100% agree that's true. But I'm going to argue that prices being stable, meaning having a 1 or 2% appreciation, is actually going backwards. It's not a stable pricing market because inflation is at 3, 4%. And if inflation's at 3 or 4% and you're getting 1 or 2% appreciation on your properties, for home sellers and for home buyers, potential home buyers, it can seem like the market is going slightly backwards. So remember, stability, in my opinion, does not feel like growth and opportunity to people. You have
Yes.
sellers, think about this, Burl. You have sellers who are still anchored in 2021, 2020 prices. My price should be 950,000. What do you mean it's 890,000? Buyers in many cases are waiting for that. I call it the deal moment. The deal moment. I'm waiting till I can get myself a deal. And so what happens is it creates paralysis for the sellers and for the buyers. So you have all of those life events happening, Verl, that are causing people to need to move forward, but because of the market and their perceptions, they're just stuck.
Yeah,
Stuck.
they're not moving. One of the things I'm seeing that consistent with this is we'll have areas in probably more city based that are just absolutely doing great. And when I say doing great, they're having a lot of turn, they're moving a lot of property, but they're
Yep.
not seeing a lot of appreciation. What's
Right.
happening is that the demand of housing, people are just moving forward, they're buying and selling. But there's a lot more negotiation in the transaction. And we're also seeing a lot of deals that go under contract fail before they close because the buyers are waiting to, because something better it comes on the market before it closes. And people are getting real, I'm going to say realistic. Sellers believe when you said they go back to the 2020 pricing, they go back to the 2020 appreciation trend. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
they were having this big growth appreciation during that time, and they feel, well, now it's 26, so we've been going up at 8 or 9 or 10% a year. All of a sudden my house should be worth X today, and when they find out that it's not, they freak out. So it's an interesting thing that we both agree with, that it's going to be more city based and less national trend. I think that's a good one.
Totally, totally. Well, let's talk about something real quick before we move to the next one. I received an email 2 days ago from a client that I've been working with for 15 years. This will probably be the fifth or sixth transaction we've been through. And his email was very clear. We paid 630 for the house. I'm ready to sell it and move to Tennessee, provided I can get 700. If I can't get 700, I'll just wait. And by the way, on the surface, that is a perfectly logical stance to take. But in terms of them getting out of their house as much as they can and getting another home in Tennessee as cheaply as they can, next year probably will not provide as good of an opportunity as this year. And so think about that. I sent him an email just before this session and I said, hey, I've done all the research. Let me dig into the details and I'll follow up with you and have a conversation. So my job is to get him to understand the realities of the market, not just his opinion on the market and what he should do. And so my goal is to get him to open his mind and say, well, gosh, if I sell my house for 20,000 less here, and I'm they're scaling down in house, but I spend $20,000 less than I would have there, then it ultimately winds up being a wash. And so I think we're going to have so many of those conversations. One of the things I want to mention too on the first one is it's going to feel like prices are continuing to rise and get out of reach because in some cases in the U.S. and Canada, I mean, insurance, taxes, maintenance. I mean, these costs are just exploding. I've just gone through the process of getting homeowners insurance and car insurance in the state of Texas, and it costs twice as much in Texas as it does in the state of Georgia. I know it's because they have 10 times as much hail. I get that. But, sometimes people just, it winds up being very complicated by all of the additional cost.
Well, everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah, that's true. That's including the insurance cost.
So what do you think about mortgage rates? It says mortgage rates might ease, but buyer psychology will shift more. The bigger shift will be buyer acceptance of the current mortgage rate than the actual mortgage trend.
They said specifically in the article that the mortgage rates would remain in the low to mid sixes, and I do not agree with that. I think that we will have mortgage rates that get down into the fives, and I think the reality is that we have a president who is accustomed to getting his way. And I think he's decided that mortgage rates are causing him to show up poorly in the eyes of the American people, and he is going to figure out how to get it done. Not that the president can decide that the Treasury is going to buy $200 billion worth of mortgage backed securities. Somebody else has to do that, but he can certainly be the one who's standing on top of the desk shouting as loudly as he possibly can. And so I think you're going to see an interesting standoff between the president and the powers that be and the Federal Reserve. And those of you who do a lot of research know that the Federal Reserve, the Fed funds rate doesn't necessarily control mortgage rates, but it has a lot to do with the yield on the 10-year Treasury bond. And as you know, that's what controls the mortgage rate. So it's interesting to see what's happened. I do want to point out one quick thing about mortgage rates. Historically, there is a spread of about 1.75 points between the 30-year fixed rate and the yield on the 10-year Treasury bond. And I know that because something is wrong with me. I've tracked it back the last 75 years. I don't know what makes me want to do that. When rates were highest up in the sevens, that spread, Verl, was not 1.75%, it was 2.75%. So lenders were requiring a premium. So if the market gets better, then the base market rate gets better. But as lenders believe we're finding we're either going to go up or we're going to go down, we're not just going to stay stuck, then they are more certain about what's going to happen. So when they're doing all these mortgages at a higher rate, they might be able to do it at 6.5, but they got to do it at 7 because they know so many of them will refinance when the rates go down, and they can't afford to do that. So hopefully there will be less margin required by the investors who are buying these mortgages moving forward. Hopefully.
Yeah, this is one of the catch-22 things because the hypothesis is by dropping rates, it'll stimulate more buying. The problem is when it stimulates more buying and creates more pressure on the limited inventory that we already have, it drives prices up and it creates the same problem. So it doesn't really solve the problem that we're trying to solve in the marketplace. So maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, but I don't think whether it drops from 6 to in the mid fives is going to make that big of an impact on how many more houses we sell this year.
So what if I told you that I have taken mortgage interest rates and divided them into 4 different tranches of what and divided them into what mindset I think is created for that. And let me just run through these because I agree with you, but I think there's a little bit more if interest rates get a little bit lower. Meaning, I say if interest rates are below 5%, it is emotional buying. People are going crazy. They're buying more. They're doing whatever. It's just all emotional, I think. If it rates are 5 to 6%, I think it's rational. People are making rational decisions. They probably are pretty good on their own. Over 6%, I think people have this justification mindset. I'm only going to do it if I can justify it. If I can't justify it, I'm not going to do it. And then really when we were over 7%, I think the emotional position of your average home buyer was avoidance, like very, very specifically. So it could make a big difference. I'll be honest with you. I don't want it to shift too fast because I don't want it to turn back into a seller's market. And I'm going to say this, and everybody who's on today's session is not going to enjoy hearing this, but when the market goes back over to a seller's market, we're going to learn what it's really like to earn our commission on the buyer side and to have to negotiate for that. Because right now, the market is soft enough that most sellers are willing to agree to compensate someone on the buyer side. But as it turns over into a seller's market, you might get sellers that just say, hey, Stephanie, no way. You're going to have to get your buyers to pay your own commission. We're not going to do that. And that could start happening. And that's not a bad thing because it's something we need to learn to be able to discuss anyway.
Well, I think most buyers are payment buyers. And so when they look at the thing, what the interest rate is in combination with the sales price is and how much money they have down, they look at their payment and whether or not they can afford it up or down.
Agreed.
And even though we hope it's different, that's really what it is. And so a bigger impact might be a 50-year mortgage than a raise or a decrease of the interest rates. And I think that might be something that moves the needle even greater because because of how it impacts the payment. The payment just goes down. I don't care what the mortgage is. I can afford it now. It's less than rent.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And
And
so
there's something wrong with you that you actually do that kind of thought process and you put it into
yes, but it's okay because Leslie says she loves me anyway, even though I wouldn't. Mhm. Stephanie, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, and I'm sure you're going to touch on this. For those of us with any type of longevity in real estate, I think the thing that we need to see that aligns really well with 1, 2, and 3 is agents don't have the ability, the skill set of negotiation that used to be needed, and dealing with the interest rates and how maybe a buy down works. Maybe there's other things that can come into play, and agents aren't learning how to negotiate in their skill set. They're learning how to do a TikTok, but they're not learning how to negotiate.
So, Stephanie, thank you for spoiling what was going to come at the end of this. And the teasing, by the way, is great. So it's so
It's true, though.
funny.
She's right on.
She's 100% on. And I started thinking about this yesterday afternoon. And I thought, okay, well, so in your case, Cleve, you're disagreeing with a lot of these, or you're giving some expanded details. But what does a team leader do with that? How does the team leader teach their team members? And actually, how does the team leader learn themselves how to have these conversations? And so I put together for you guys, and it's the first time and it's been given out. It'll probably be the only time it's ever been given out. I will actually use this with my private coaching clients to help them, but it's called the Unstuck Communication Playbook. And so, Stephanie, a couple of the things that are mentioned in the playbook, there's one for buyers, one for sellers. They're all in the same document, and you'll get the opportunity to download that a little bit later. But it is something we need to role play big time, big time. Okay, Candace says, Verl, we got 10 to get through, and we are
Let's
goofing
go.
around. We got to rock and roll.
You think more houses are going to become rentals, and sellers are going to wait out the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people can't get their price, it's almost unavoidable for you to have a few, that show up in the rentals. But I'll also tell you that a lot of the institutional buyers have less properties today than they had 2 or 3 years ago. We did asset disposition for a very large investor in Georgia, and they would in the Atlanta area sell 150 or 200 of them every single year because they didn't fit their investment profile, and they weren't buying another 200 to replace those 200. So I would say, you look at institutional investor ownership throughout the country is somewhere between 2 and 3% of all housing units. It's a small number. And I would say that we'll probably, home ownership rate is 65, 66% right now, which means 35 or 34% of the households out there are rental households. And my guess is it'll stay somewhat similar. Remember, the all-time high was when President Clinton was in office, and I don't even exactly know why, but home ownership percentage got to 70 or 71%. So it's still not bad historically.
Yeah, I don't really have a comment on this. I think there's some people that are going to rent. I think you're seeing it more in the downtown metro markets where people are holding on to properties and renting it because there's a higher demand for rentals in those areas closer to industry than in the suburbs where people are moving neighborhoods. It's a different kind of buyer and seller.
It is. One thing we have to remember too is the Class A apartments that were built all over this country, all over North America. They're having a hard time, so they're seeing decreases in their average rental rates. And you have to wonder, is that something that would spill over into the single family detached or attached rental units as well? Because it could put some downward pressure on it.
Yeah, totally. You know, at Inman last week, I don't think there were two things every speaker talked about. One was Compass buying anywhere brands, and the other was AI. And if those two things didn't come up with every speaker, every presenter, everybody that was on stage, something was wrong. The other one was the clear cooperation and the exclusive listings. Those are the four topics that were really big. So we talk about AI search, home search pricing, and broker productivity. I have a really strong opinion on this. I don't think it's going to enable new platforms to look different. I think it's going to transform the industry and it's going to eliminate so many positions. It's going to be a massive disruption. And we're not even in the beginning of seeing how AI is going to reshape the real estate industry. People think AI means they can, redecorate a room or do a flyer. We're seeing things now with AI that are actually making money and replacing individuals and saving time. They're making people so much more productive because of the tools and the resources that are there. I think it's going to be way more transformational than shaping home search. Cleve, I've been doing a bunch of research in this because I've been asked to speak at the Appraisal Association as a keynote on AI and how it's impacting their business. And I want you to think about how the banks have taken now and they're accepting automated valuation models. So mortgages are now approving appraisals that have never had anybody walk through the house. They have to do a drive-by and take pictures. And so the association is trying to put into rules and things that require, measuring certain things in homes to make appraisals work. What I think is there's going to be a very big transformation in the entire industry. So We can,
Totally. And just remember, there are no automated valuation models that are used with poorly qualified borrowers. So
right.
it is the qualification of the borrower that determines whether or not. And the truth is, they're not saying we don't need to understand the accurate value. What they're saying is it doesn't matter based on this particular borrower. I want to add something as we get into number five. And so I agree with you that AI is going to just rock and roll. We're going to see things over the next few years that we couldn't have even imagined to see. But AI is nothing more than a power tool. And when I see it used in untrained hands, it just helps people make mistakes faster. And so there is still a very important role for us as real estate professionals to take in making sure that we, use it to prepare for better conversations or diagnose listing problems faster or help people understand upfront what's going to happen. But we can't just take what AI spits out to us and believe that it is true because AI does not understand it's wrong. It doesn't understand it. Prompting AI is a difficult task, and most people don't do it very well. And so I looked up just to see what ChatGPT admits its error rate is when people ask very specific questions. And it started out between 25 and 30%. And today they still say it has a 5 to 15% error rate, which means you ask it a very specific question and it gives you an answer that is wrong 15% of the time. And we have to remember that. And now I was on a session this morning, Verl, with a guy who's using uh, a software called Lovable to create his own leadership tracking spreadsheet. And so, who I worry for is all of these companies that sell, SaaS software, because people can get in and create things that I heard somebody say the other day that they in 2 weeks created something that rivaled Salesforce to use as a CRM. And I don't know about you, but I would feel worried. I would be a little bit worried if I was somebody that was selling software as a service.
Okay, so just for a little bit of fun here. So last night I got a phone call. I was at the office late, maybe 8:30, and I was building a custom Gemini gem for a client. And we were putting all of their financials in, all their historical data, all of their information in, all of their agent stuff, and it was really interesting. And I get a text message from my pickleball coach, which I always take those. And
Important.
she says, I got to tell you what I'm doing. I said, what are you doing? She says, well, I'm creating websites and I've built all of these things. I'm coding now. I'm like, who is this? Right? What she's creating is they've created, her and her fiance have created a pickleball website where people can send in their video of them playing. And they've done this all with AI. And it then analyzes every position, every shot, every movement, and then gives real-time feedback. And they've written the whole thing themselves using AI tools. And neither one of them have any tech background. And they actually
Right.
looked at it and it was freaking awesome. It was awesome. And then she said, and then I built another one that's going to be on a school platform. Cleve, you'll get a kick out of this. She said, I've taken this website and I've created it so old people don't get injured playing pickleball and how to avoid injuries. And so there's a whole thing on that. What's interesting to me is 2 years ago, they had ideas of what they might be able to do. 3 weeks ago, they learned how to use AI to do it. So what were ideas in the past are now becoming people are actually happening and innovation is happening. I presented a topic on AI for a conference going to be held in the fall, and I gave him two alternative topics. And I had to say my disclosure was nothing in either one of these topics is going to be applicable by the time we do your event.
Right.
But if we
Right.
did it today, this is what it would be. So
Right.
everything's changing. I absolutely believe AI is going to change. Um, I actually believe AI is going to change and replace a lot of real estate agents. I don't think we're going to need as many. I think that the consumer is going to be able to get all the information they need to determine whether or not want to buy a house. And they're going to look at a lot fewer houses before they make decisions. And the agents that they used to need to drive around and look at houses are going to replace with a lot of it's going to be technology. And so you hear people say that. I think that people that use AI will replace those who don't. Yeah, I think that's also true. I think that AI is going to disrupt and eliminate a lot of positions in a lot of businesses.
I think you're right. And Verl, we need to dig into something. I want to know how much you paid Bridget Kastner before this session because she says that the Appraisal Institute is excited for you to be our keynote speaker at their
Something's
annual
wrong with
conference.
them.
So, yeah, Bridget, we need to get you into a psychologist just as soon as possible and see what's going on there. No, we did have an interesting comment, Verl, and I hadn't thought about this, but Rich, I think it's Schaefer, says, do you think increased seller awareness also causes negotiation hurdles? And what he's saying is, or this is what I took from it, is sellers being aware of buy downs and all the things they need to do, pay the buyer's agent's fee, but it's not really required. And he's asking, hey, do you think this is going to cause the sellers to negotiate with us as their agent more than they would have normally? So, hey, I'm paying you X%. Now I got to pay the other X%. Now I've got to pay $12,000 for a buy down. Is it possible that they would say, look, I don't want to pay you on money that I'm spending. I only want to pay you on money that I'm getting. It's totally possible that they can do that. But Rich, that would be nothing that would be unusual. I can remember when sellers, when the market was really a seller's market, and I was trying to convince the seller to contribute toward the buyer's closing costs because I knew it needed to be done. I remember having to negotiate with some sellers even back then, because the truth is, if they said, I don't want to pay the buyer and pay you 3% of what I'm paying someone else, in some ways that made sense to me. I'm not saying I liked it, but in some ways it made sense to me. So, Rich, I don't know if that's helpful, if I answered your question at all, but I think that is going to continue to happen. And as it becomes more of a seller's market, then they will start putting that pressure on the buyer side of the transaction and on their agent, which is that's just the way it works.
We'll do another webinar just on AI, Cleve, where we can talk about all the things we could do with it. But I will tell you this, that when I go into a negotiation or a consulting client now, what AI gives me the ability to do would usually take us months to get the
Yeah.
data we needed to be able to make decisions from a consulting perspective to help people move forward. We can do in minutes.
Yeah.
And from when you talk about negotiating, I like if knowing what I know today, going into if wasn't a real estate agent and I didn't have the background I had, if I went into a negotiation, I would look at the property data. I would have AI give me everything about the seller they could find online and what their footprint was from a human perspective. And then I would look at all of the data around what's actually being done and not being done. And then I would have my offer crafted in a way that resonated with the personality, style, history, behavior, and experience of that seller. And when they received their offer, it would be like I was speaking to them because of
Yeah.
all the information we knew. And I would do the same thing if I was negotiating on the seller side with a buyer, I would go back and I would find out everything I could, and I would craft my messaging to a way that resonated best with the most data to back up whatever that counter looked like. I think that and we'll do it in seconds. It's not going to happen in minutes. We'll have little AI agents. When an offer comes in, I'm just going to upload it to my agent. My agent's going to analyze everything for me, give it back to me, and say, this is what it should look like. And I'll go,
Yeah.
and I'm going to say, great, write the offer. And the agent's going to write the offer, and then we're going to move forward.
And I say trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Agree with that 100%. All right.
I get emails from people all the time, and I'm reading it, and literally after the second paragraph, I'm like, I'm not reading another word because I know this person didn't write it, and I don't give a flying crap what ChatGPT thinks about this particular topic. And
Right.
I will literally respond and say, hey, send me something that you write yourself so I can understand what we're talking about. And by the way, I'm not discounting the benefits of AI. What I'm saying is AI can get off the reservation, and it doesn't know that it has gotten off track.
Yeah. In this most recent analyzer I built, and I was just playing with it. We actually had code written to verify whether or not the data was accurate.
Hmm.
So there's code being written inside the code that's inside the GPT that's telling us whether or not the data being uploaded actually works from a math perspective. And then
Yep.
you still have to verify, but I'm telling you, it's getting easier and
Oh
better.
no, listen,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you in the slightest. You are 100% correct. I'm just saying if I have AI do something for me, I'm going to figure out how to verify myself that it is right. Maybe I have to have another AI engine verified. I have to do something to make
Right.
sure that I'm not, garbage in, garbage out.
Agreed. Okay, the next two trends are both based on design as a differentiator, exterior design and interior design. We can talk about both of those as one topic if you want to, but going forward, homes that stand out with design and craftsmanship consistency will command attention, price strength. I often caution sellers that the wrong furnishings alone can cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I say true in the higher prices and described differently in the average and lower prices. So in some cases you have a unique interior or exterior at a certain price range and it decreases the value of the property because people, there's safety in numbers. And so if you live in a neighborhood and you have 300 houses just like this one or similar to it, there's safety in understanding value. But what I will say is that last sentence. I often caution sellers that the wrong furnishings alone can cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is totally true. And so at the average and lower prices, to me, it's all cosmetics. It's all aesthetics. It's, does it look new? Does it feel new? Does it give me the feeling that I got when I went into that model home? And I think that definitely makes a property command a higher price. As you move into the higher or the luxury markets, unique drives everything because people in that market, that's what they're looking for. Home sellers are looking for you as their listing agent to understand the uniqueness of their property, and uniqueness means one of a kind, not only five of it. If it's unique, it's one of a kind. And they want you to celebrate what's unique in their property. And buyers who have enough financial resources to buy something at the higher prices, they want to own something that is different than everyone else's. So I think this one is true at the higher prices, but I don't necessarily agree with it at the lower prices. I think it's just mostly cosmetics at the lower prices.
I think that they all tie together. I think homes that are properly staged that give the buyer the ability to emotionally move in are going to sell better and faster than those that aren't staged properly. So it's a simple thing. I don't think this is not rocket science. Like this is a trend that we're seeing. I think this is like, I don't even care to read it.
But what do you think about a home that has a unique layout?
Well, I used to believe that, every house, there's a buyer for it until I listed one that had a hot tub at the feet of the master bed built into the floor. And then I realized that, there really isn't a buyer for every house. That is a
Right.
really weird thing to do. And we're going to have to cover that up and change it if you want to sell this stupid house. So I think uniqueness is great. I think that unique
Yep.
things from an architecture perspective that uplift and create, but every time you do something more unique, that's more eccentric, it eliminates the pool of people that are going to be attracted to it. So
Exactly
you
right.
have to be careful. And if you're look in the higher dollar properties, I think the more unique and the more eccentric and the more that there's attraction to that.
Yep.
I've seen houses in Park City that look like they belong in LA,
Yeah.
and I think they're never going to sell because they're contemporary and modern, and everybody else around them have big log homes, and they sell for $32 million, and
Right.
I'm blown away. So
Yeah.
people have different tastes, and especially people with eccentric taste. So I like the trend. I think it's true. I I don't, with most of these trends, Cleve, I'll tell you, as I go through all of these, I might have a bad attitude because most of the things are things that are good to be aware of, but we can't control. And we can control a lot of things that will make a difference on whether or not we're successful going into 2026. And most of the things we've talked about give us the way to message differently. But if we don't take the appropriate actions, there's no benefit to the understanding. I know a lot of really smart people that don't make any money that study a lot of things, right? Because they don't know how to put that to action. And so for me, it's the understanding and then going back and putting application to now what that goes with it. So Scott, I'm not going to go back. It was all design stuff. Number 8 is also around designing and professional staging will be non-negotiable in 2026. It's always negotiable. Like everything's negotiable. I think you're going to see a lot of houses that aren't professionally staged. I think a lot of realtors think they have good taste. It doesn't mean they have educated taste. I've seen homes that a lot of people call staged that I'm like, by who? Like you want to know who are they and what are they smoking? Like they professionally staged house. And
What
the
does that
other
mean?
thing I think is really funny, I think what's going to be more scary is the houses that are virtually staged. And then when you get there and they're so different than what the experience was by the client online, I think that's going to be a bigger issue than whether or not we're doing staging. What do you think about that?
I think some agents are already 10 years ahead of you. They were doing virtual staging way back when. And every time you walk into a room that is unstaged, when you get there, there is a picture of the staged room for you to be able to see it so you can understand how things get used. But one of the things that I want to mention, and I'm just going to ask you this question, Verl.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a trick question, and I hope you miss it because it'll be funnier for everybody if
It's
you do.
likely I'll miss it.
So is it professional staging that is so important, or is it something else that is so important? Because to me, I went into an HGTV home that was fully rehabbed, only on the front and the right side, not on the back and the left side, and it was fully professionally staged. And there was twice as much stuff in that home as you should ever have in a home. And there was no way that what they did to that at home in any way helped sell the home. Now, I posted a blog about that. HGTV didn't think that was very funny. So they sent me a cease and desist to take down my blog. But it's not professional staging that you need. In my opinion, it's something different. Burl,
I don't know what you're fishing for the answer on this. I think
I'm
it,
just fishing for you to get it wrong so I can
yeah,
celebrate that
I
no,
mean,
I'm just kidding.
whether it's professionally staged or staged by an amateur, I think that the environment needs to create a situation where the buyer can see themselves living in it. And when
Boom.
and when there's too much crap in it and there's a lot of personal stuff, I can't see myself in it. I'm visual. So for
Yep.
me, the visualization of it matters. So my wife can look at a home though, because has a good degree in design, and look at how
Yes.
it's done and say, and she can wipe the slate clean and see it laid out and visually accept it. I can't. I got to see it.
And so,
So,
Verl, what you said to me, and you nailed it. It is not the staging that is important. It is the experience of the buyer that
yep.
results from the staging, that results from the painting, that results from the new countertops, whatever it is, because you want an experience for a buyer as they go through the home that continues to elevate emotionally as they go through the home, and you don't want emotional interrupts. You go downstairs in the basement and there is a, locked room in the very corner of the basement, and you open it up and there's something weird in the middle of the room. That interrupts the entire showing, meaning because it gets the buyer to focus on that instead of focusing on, like you said, hey, does this house work for me? So I think staging is important, but in many cases we forget that we're just doing that so the buyer has a very positive experience everywhere they go in that home.
There's a lot of opportunity in there. Scott says before and after stage photos could be provided if a standard is set. I actually like that. I'd love to show before and after. You talked about back in the day. We were selling virtual staging with Obio back in the day. I never got anything out of that stock. Did you, Cleve?
No,
Well, the
no.
pioneers in the space in virtual staging and changing the color of the walls, literally in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were doing it.
Yeah.
We were so cutting edge. We used to tell realtors they needed laptops.
That's right. Oh yeah, you used to sell laptops and the printers and everything together.
Yeah. And
It
digital
was
cameras. All
it's
right.
a big deal. But I do believe what Scott said, his last comment, is those before and after photos, just to make sure that there's some honesty, some transparency, and here's how we got here, and letting them understand the experience. Like we used to have houses that had terrible countertops, and we'd come with an allowance, and allowances don't work the way they used to in the past because they're harder to give. But we would put the actual samples of the new granite countertops that they could use to replace those. And it's amazing we created that experience. And I know I'm not saying that we've done anything that everybody else on here probably hasn't done 100 times. It's just smart, but it's all about creating that experience with the buyer. Oh, I don't like those countertops. Oh my gosh, I like the ones in the middle right there though. That changes the experience as the buyer walks through the house.
100%. Virtual stage is going to improve. It absolutely will. I believe it's going to improve so much you can't tell the difference. And it's going to require someone to actually walk through the home and give you that feedback. But it may not be like it is today. One of the things I'm seeing in places like heavy metropolitan areas like Toronto, Canada, they have so much traffic and congestion that agents are doing all of the showings virtually. They're going out and they're going in and they're getting everything set up, and then they're doing the virtual showings and they're showing the buyers the properties without actually the buyers driving around from house to house. So it's changing the way they show property. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. Virtual staging is important, but someone's got to be feet in the street saying, hey, I'll tell you the one thing you're never going to be able to tell with virtual staging, and that's whether or not the house smells like cat pee.
That's true. But you walk into it, you can tell.
I can sometimes tell in the driveway.
I can tell if something smells like cat pee with my nose closed because my eyes start to water. So I know
Yep,
it smells like cat pee. Like,
right. And so you can make it look good, but there's certain things you cannot see. You can't look behind things, and you can't. you can't see where water might have damaged something that has been painted over in a virtual photograph. And so we have to be really, really careful. And I also think that applies in the appraisal side of things as well. These automated appraisal models, they can't see the things that an appraiser sees when they walk through and measure a property and they actually look at it in depth. And so when you're doing commodity-based valuation, meaning every house is the same in the neighborhood, the disclosure on that is if no one's looked at it, you're taking a higher risk.
That's exactly right. And you really have to compare conditions. So when we use different comparables, we'll put them in an A, B, or a C group. An A is something that looks like 2025. A B is something that looks like 2010. And if those of you who've been around a long time, you can picture the difference in those two things. And then a C is something that looks like 1989. You know it for sure because it's got the green vines growing up the wallpaper in the kitchen. Like you just know that's what it is. It's brass,
Right.
it's jewel tone colors, it's all of that. And so we try to put different tranches of the listings of the comparables together. So we're comparing apples to apples. And then the cool thing is when you do that, you can say that if you're a B, you could spend this much money and go to a C or A, and this is what we think will happen to your value.
Yeah, very, very true. 11, private listings are primarily going to benefit ultra luxury market. Man, this is a, you want me to tell you who I think primary private listings are going to benefit?
The brokers.
Yeah, the internal company who has them. And so, this is a big battle between Compass and between, this is the main stage battle at Inman last week was all about this private listing thing. The CEOs of different companies are battling around it. For me, I think that anything that puts the seller at a disadvantage by limiting exposure to the property hurts the consumer. And so, because you want to sell it in-house, how is that a benefit to the seller? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me logically, but I'm just man, I can see why they'd want to do it because they opportunity to sell it in-house, and
Yep.
because they can double end the transaction, their agents can sell it. It's a 100% money move. There is no other motivation, no matter what is being told by people, than that. Um, it, but I also think that it's going to be very attractive to a lot of agents that do luxury listings because they want
Yep.
the ability to be able to capture that, and they're going to learn how to sell it, and they're going to learn how to sell it really, really well.
Yep. And Verl, I think the private listings has nothing to do with double ending transactions. I think private listings is all focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is being able to offer something that provides unique opportunities to get buyers to engage with you. So it is your lead generation program. It's not your here's how we sell and double in. They will do that, and I agree. And I think sellers ought to have the right to do what they want to do, but I don't think sellers should be encouraged to have a private listing when it might not be the best thing for them to do. Meaning, you can't, if I want to sell my house for half of what it's worth, you can't tell me that's right or wrong. But
Right.
the truth is you want to get the exposure. So I think if I have never been in a Compass board meeting, but I think if we were in meetings listening to executives of these companies talk, it is how do we offer unique opportunities for buyers so they will work with us and ignore everyone else? And I think that is the end of the story in that regard. That's what they're trying to do, trying to give their agents who represent buyers a leg up when it comes to generating leads and converting clients.
We have clients that do luxury properties that do private listings, and they love the opportunity to do that, and they make a lot of money, and it's very
Sure.
successful for them.
Sure.
And they're able to talk their clients into a process that says we're going to first market it internally, privately. If we don't have the ability to sell it in privately, then we'll put it to the open market, and
Yep.
they sell it. And so and like it's okay. I just think that as a seller, I want everybody to see my property.
I
Like,
would too. That's
who
exactly
don't I
right.
want to show it? There might be one agent with one client that sells one house a year that has the buyer that's going to pay top dollar for my house.
Hmm.
And none of us have ever heard of them. And they're not with any of our companies. They just happen to have that one relationship. And
That's exactly right.
I don't want to lose that.
That's exactly right.
Interesting. Man, this is a big one. Insurance costs and climate resilience are going to influence decisions. Insurance cost and climate resilience. What do you think that means?
In Aubrey, Texas, if you have I forget what they're called, a 4 rated roof, a roof that's rated 4 on the ability to withstand something, your insurance is $2,000 a year less than if you have a standard roof shingle. So I think the truth is that insurance companies have had so much risk, and I'm not saying they're losing money, but they're not making as much money as they want to, and they have to price policies. And I know in Georgia, we saw a nice run up in the cost of homeowners insurance and auto insurance, but over the last year, they've started to kind of normalize, started to settle down. But I think everything is important. You know, at one point in time, you could have sold a house. It didn't matter how old the roof was. Sometimes you'd get in trouble with an FHA or VA loan if the roof was old, but the others, it could be falling off the house and they would just approve it. But people are not doing that today, and insurance companies are going, we're not going to insure it. And once they can't get insurance, everything just shuts down. So I think that's all important. And the power backup, it's interesting. I never thought having any kind of power backup would be important to me. But the house I'm buying in Aubrey, Texas actually has an external plug-in for a generator on the outside of the house that bypasses a lot of the circuits and only connects to certain areas in the house. I think that's an amazing selling feature, and I never thought about it before in my life that I actually needed that. And I don't know that I would need it, but when I saw it, I wanted it.
So I'm just throwing this out there, but if you have to plug your generator in when the power goes out, will it still work?
Oh yeah, because it's
I'm
gas.
just,
It's gas powered.
I'm just
So
messing with
we're
you.
plugging the output into the house, not the input into the house.
I know, I'm just messing
Hey,
with
Verl, would you stay on after this webinar? I want to explain to you how generators work. Just stay on for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I have them. We have generators.
I'm
So
just messing with you.
this is fun. This is kind of an interesting one. I think that this isn't gonna change pricing, but it'll absolutely make a house more attractive. And so it'll actually be houses that sold that have the options that others don't.
Yep.
And
And
we've
I
thought
think it's
about, we've thought about with solar and with some of the impacts of the having bad alternative power sources and things like that. And as we've gone through and done the math and tried to figure out what it really does, my personal, for where we live in Utah, determination is that if I am planning on living in the house forever, it might pencil out. But if I plan on selling it, it would be very difficult to return that.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. I think real quick on that last one, Verl, I think before houses are listed moving forward in the future, listing agents are going to have conversations with the existing homeowners insurance company to see if they would underwrite it again, because I think there's surprises that show up and they're going to have to be a little bit more proactive in working through that.
Yeah, I went through that with my renewals this year. It was very interesting because of changes
There you go.
and earthquakes.
Yep.
California's already there, Aaron. I know California's been there for a couple of years with insurance issues, and it's been a nightmare. Properties are selling, but they can't get them insured, and that's
Yep.
been the impediment with so many of our clients there. Okay, move-in ready houses are not going to perform renovation products.
So, Verl, can I read you the one word that I have on my notes here?
Yep.
Duh.
Right?
Like, why just state the obvious? That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be. And Verl, we have requests to go back to slide 6 and slide 10. I think I'm not sure exactly what they're looking for,
Yeah, we'll
but
give them.
I
We'll
want
give
to make
we'll
sure.
give everybody access to the deck. We'll give you
Oh, they can
everything.
see the whole deck. Okay, perfect.
I'll just give everybody everything. We'll
Perfect.
give everybody a couple downloads at the end. And we'll give you a copy of the deck. This is
Good.
we want to share it with you. Um, So moving right, yeah, I think that there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines looking for opportunities to put their money into real estate. So I'm not sure that I agree with this. I think that the renovation projects with the capital that's sitting on the sidelines looking to invest in real estate is going to actually make those properties very attractive. There's a lot of people that are buying investment property today.
Agreed, and with the investors, but I'm talking about somebody who wants to move in a home and live. But as real estate agents, we ought to be able to find some amazing deals on homes that need some cosmetic improvements. I did a flip just a couple of months ago, and I probably made as much money on that flip as I've made on a flip in years and years and years. And it's because the seller did not want to keep that house at all under any circumstances and sold it at a price where we could fix it up and make a profit. And I
So
think there's
Cleve,
a lot of that out there.
I didn't mean to stop my share. Let me go back here for a second. Can we do, like, it would drive me crazy if we ended this without a now what? So what? We've talked about all the trends. Now what? Now what? How do we message to it? What do we do to help people? Let's give them some resources or tools and let's talk through them real quick.
Perfect. So what we're giving away today are 3 different resources. Now, the first 2 resources, the threat elimination systems and the emotional transformation communication, those are documents that are normally only shared with our private coaching clients. These are very, very, very powerful documents. So if as you were going through today's session, you started thinking, oh my gosh, okay, that's a real negative thing, but I need to learn how to message that from a positive standpoint, combining the threat elimination systems, which is a system that is designed to solve for a threat or something that has you as a buyer or seller stuck. And you combine that with emotional transformation communications that teaches you to have conversations about the emotions. They want to go from feeling stuck to feeling like they're empowered, from feeling sad to being happy. People want to change their emotions. Everything that we buy because of what we think it does for us from an emotional standpoint. And then take those two and honestly read each and every one of them, sit down with your team, work through the threat elimination systems, come up with two or three of them, then work through the emotional communication, come up with a script, if you will, for each of the two or three threat elimination systems. And then you've got the Unstuck Communication Playbook. And again, that was produced just for this webinar. It probably won't be given away in this exact form any other time, but it gives you communication protocol and training for buyers and sellers. And then it also gives you some samples of some scripts that you can actually role play when people are giving objections.
Cleve, when I think about, we spend a lot of time talking about artificial intelligence, trends that are happening in the market, things that are happening out there. My belief is that artificial intelligence without emotional intelligence is more harmful than helpful. But when you take the artificial intelligence, the access to data, and you add the humanization to it with emotional intelligence, it's an unfair competitive advantage. And
Yep.
so as and Cleve's been the author of a lot of the content here, and we have an amazing writing team at Workman that works on this stuff with them. And the content and the way that it's written is written so powerfully because of the emotional intelligence languaging that allows you to help people move from feeling stuck or depressed or sad to optimistic or hopeful or moving forward. Those trigger words and emotional intelligence are the difference between average and like entire next level. And the other thing is not on here, but if you're not having these kinds of conversations with your coach, if you're not having someone that looks at the business and the industry of what's happening, if they're not investing heavily in artificial intelligence and helping you figure out how to navigate these trade winds, then reach out to Workman. There's somebody on our team that would love to work with you. If you believe that there's another level that you could be performing at, is all we do. All we do is look at your business, figure out where the gaps are, identify where you want to go, and then we help you reverse engineer in getting there. And we'd love to help you. So if there's an opportunity for you to grow and you'd like some help, sign up for a coaching consultation. Let one of our consultants have a conversation with you. We'd love to work with you. We have amazing individuals that several of our coaches are on the call and they're making questions, and it's been fun to see the interaction. Any questions from anybody in the group? Let's just open it up to anybody. You can have a question or comment. Thank you for by the way, I love the interaction today and
Yes.
the questions and the head nods. Tracy, I appreciate you being here, man. You're like, I can see you're listening and paying attention to what we're doing. What comes to your mind as we go through these trends and things like that, Tracy? What's your feeling about where we are and where we're headed?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
Great. Where are you calling in from?
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh,
All
awesome.
right.
Yeah. But I like everything that you all have shared today, and I will be looking into your coaching. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that. How are things in your business? What's going on in Little Rock that, like, when we went through some of this stuff, you go like, that makes sense or that doesn't?
a lot of it does make sense. I mean, we are, things have been a little stagnant, but they are improving, and hoping in the next quarter that things will really pick up.
One of the things I'm seeing in markets where people feel stuck, where they hope the market improves, if we can figure out what activities need to change or behaviors we need to change, we can find success regardless of whether or not the market moves in the next quarter. And so if that's helpful to you, I think that when you have professionals that are on a call like this and you're looking at the market and the industry, a lot of us our behaviors are consistent with what the market is doing. And I'm an anti-market guy. Whatever the market's doing, I'm going to go take market share. So when the market's going down, I'm going to figure out where the opportunities are that everybody else is sitting away from and figure out how to go get it. So keep that in the back of your mind as we talk, because it's going to be fun to help you take some market share, regardless of what happens in the next quarter.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you. Stephanie, you've already chatted with us, or David. David, thanks for being with us today. I appreciate your engagement, man.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts or questions that you have that we have to that you'd like that we haven't addressed?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we've seen an increase like a 13% in our listings. We've seen an increase in our pendings, but
Good.
people are still sitting on the sidelines. A lot of
Mhm.
sellers are sitting on the sidelines. What do you recommend to get the sellers off, where they are and moving into putting their house on the market?
Yeah, I'm going to quote Cleve while he's on the call, but the way that you get them off the sidelines is to give them options. They're stuck and don't feel like they can move forward because they don't know what their options even are. And so, in our last coaches training, we talked about becoming options dealers instead of real estate salespeople. And so, our job isn't to make them move. Our job is to really understand their situation and then lay out the really clear options. And that's what these shift modules are. And we've got almost 25. You're probably approaching 30 in the pipeline of all threats that cause people to pause. And then we have a specific tool, resource, dialogue, and system that you give them as an option to make a decision. And sometimes, the option is to sell it. Sometimes it's to rent it. And sometimes it's to do nothing at all. Sometimes it's to stay there and let your kids move in with you. Like whatever that option is, I believe it's our role to figure out and ask the enough questions to find out what really is causing them to feel like they need to move, and then give them the best options. And whatever the decision they make, we help them with that process, even if we're not involved in the decision. So
Yep.
be
The
an
other
option
thing,
dealer.
the other thing you mentioned is about we're not real estate agents, we're counselors.
Mhm.
And as counselors, we listen to what the information that the buyer or seller gives us to make a determination if they're even ready to move forward. And we don't want to work with them when they're not ready to move forward, but we want to help them. And a lot of agents don't have that ability to ask the right questions, to have the listening mode rather than the attack mode, and a
Yeah.
series of responsives to everything that they're given. Um, how do you how do you train people to be able to do that?
Cleve, I'm going to let you answer that because I have to go on to the next call. Everybody,
Yep.
thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm just going
Thank
to
you.
step out of this one. I'll talk to you all soon. And I hope this was valuable. I really enjoyed it. Cleve, let's do this again.
Yes, 100%. We'll absolutely do it. And David, when Verl says give them options, the option is do nothing or look at the other options. It's not do nothing or do something. It's do nothing and don't understand all the numbers in black and white, or understand all the numbers in black and white and still possibly make a decision not to move forward, and which is totally okay. And so, if you've never had an opportunity to look at some of our shift modules, I think they're excellent. But if somebody said to me, "I don't want to sell because I don't think the number is going to work out great," I'm gonna say, "Hey, well, fantastic. You could be right." But I think what we need to do is let's sit down and do a full review so we understand the numbers, so that you can look at them black and white down to the penny, and let's see if what you're thinking is right, or if you might have some opportunities that are not so easily recognized. And so,
That's very good.
do I have to bring in a mortgage person? Do I have to, do a blended rate calculation on all their credit card debt? We got to do all kinds of stuff in order to do that. But it is not don't move forward or move forward. It's don't move forward and be in the dark, be ignorant to all the facts, or get educated on the facts so that you can make a better decision. And Payman, I think I saw you raise your hand. I don't know if you did that on purpose and you're driving. People make me very nervous when they're driving on these webinars.
No, actually, I raised my hand. I know I 80% of the time when I'm joining something in the middle of the day, I'm on the car. So,
Okay, you got to do what you got to do. Just be safe.
yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I had a pleasure to meet Verl actually last week at Inman. So I'm not familiar with the system as a whole, the company that how it works, but so I just wanted to join. And I have a question regarding you actually wrote before me talking about us becoming a counselor. That's how my business is set up, because I want to be a consultant than just someone that was gonna help them do the transaction. And with the new regulations and stuff that we haven't tried, they don't even need an agent to be part of a transaction. Okay, so
Right.
how do you think that the industry is actually trained and educated enough as us being participants in that to have that role in people's decision making? Because what I'm seeing is a lot of people are not ready to be that person, and it's going to take a long time. So what is your take on that?
So my take is simple, and if any of you who are listening to this, please don't tell all my other realtor friends that I'm saying this. I think there's a lot of training out there that people could get to be like a counselor at the highest level. And I think, Payman, when you say I'm a counselor for people, what I hear you saying is something a little bit different than that. You're saying, hey, you know what? Sometimes it makes sense for them to say no because that's what a counselor does. And so that is an option. And I'll bet you, if I was recording all of the appointments you had over the last 6 months, you've probably told somebody now's not really the time to do that. Let's wait or do this or let's get this change or something like that. And I think that is magic. But the agents who have the ability to have all of the training, in many cases they simply do not have any awareness of how deficient they are. So the reality is there are people in your market who know nothing about nothing and are not really working hard to get there. And I'm not talking bad about them because I think they do the best they can, but they think you're successful because you're lucky. They think you're successful because you're in the right place at the right time, and that is not the truth at all whatsoever. So I don't know that my opinion is right, but I do find in the world that it is very rare for someone to look at every single situation in life and ask themselves, what is my role in this problem? And you, by the way, if you go on a listing appointment or a buyer appointment and that person's got problems, you're finding your role in that problem. I've never heard you have a conversation, but I believe that is true. And so learning to do the things that need to be done comes from a first feeling responsible for needing to improve our skill set. And in my opinion, that's where we're lacking as an industry in most cases. And it's because the barrier of entry is so low in most cases.
Sometimes there's no barrier.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Thank you.
if you, especially if you get in the Southeast U.S., you can write your name, you can get a real estate license. I'm gonna have to get a license in Texas. I'm not sure I'm smart enough in Texas. I'm gonna have to do 180 hours worth of work. In Georgia, it was like 40 or 30 when I got it. I had to spell real estate correctly, REALESTATE, but it's not one word, it's two words. I lost points for that one in the original test. Hey, thanks everybody for being here. We've kept you on an additional 8 minutes. We still have half of the people on who were on originally in 9 minutes after the session. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating, and I wish all of you an amazingly successful 2026. And hopefully you found some stuff today that you can take and apply. And if you haven't, go and download all of the resources, especially that last one you're going to see. That's giving you a step-by-step roadmap for what you do to change the way you think and to change the way your agents on your team think as well. Take care, everybody.